Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
All right, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show, and I want to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find her link in the music, link to her music in the show description. So today my guest is Peggy Sealfon. Did I pronounce that properly?
Yes,
Awesome.
Absolutely perfect.
So Peggy is a renowned personal development coach. She's been captivating audiences globally with her expertise in health, lifestyle coaching, and breakthrough strategies. Her methods for reducing anxiety, stress, trauma, and fears are not only effective, but life-changing. By skillfully managing ancient wisdom with modern science, she presents a true distinctive approach to enhancing mental wellness and physical well-being. And I'm all about that as well. That's why I wanted to have Peggy on the show, that ancient wisdom with the new cutting-edge technologies. She's got a bunch of acclaimed books to her recognition, and maybe those will come up as well. But one thing I want to for sure make sure we talk about today is she's now taking her influence to new heights and also harnessing cutting-edge technologies to activate stem cells and reverse aging. And for those of you, this show is not necessarily about aging, but that's what I'm all about, reversing the effects of aging. So we're going to have a great conversation today. Peggy, thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, Deepak. We do have a lot to cover.
We do have a lot to cover. Let's jump right into it. So what I always like to ask first is, and listeners know, my backstory, so I won't get into it. Maybe a little bit will come out, but I'm always curious, how do people fall into the line of work that they're doing, when we're having the conversation? And I've had a first career, maybe you had a first career too, but I'm always curious, how do people fall into what they're doing now, especially what you're doing?
So that's a great question. And I have a PhD in reinventing myself. So I've had many careers. I actually started out as a journalist in New York City many years ago, writing for the New York Times. And
Oh, wow.
It was a very stressful existence. And I literally would go through these manic phases of great creativity, and then I'd crash and burn. And that's really what led me down this path, because otherwise I was literally going to die. I was going to, just crash and burn. And it's funny because I used to ride a motorcycle around New York City. So when I say crash, I mean it like literally and figuratively. So I had to find solutions, and I began training with these world masters and just amazing transformative methods. And so over the years of going through these different experiences, and also just different professional paths that I was taking, I finally just honed in on the fact that other people are going through a lot of the things that I had been going through and continue to go through. We're all a work in progress. So that was kind of how I found my way to this path of really wanting to help others and making a difference. And the more I help others, the more I'm helping myself, because we learn and grow from our work. So it's always fun and exciting, and it's always fun and exciting to meet like-minded people like yourself.
Absolutely. And that's the whole reason I started this podcast, was to have interesting conversations with interesting people. And I wholeheartedly agree. I learn from my clients as well, just as much from them as they learn from me, for sure. So again, what you're all about. Let me start here, maybe, so maybe you can, I think we all intuitively know this, but I'd love to hear your take on it. How does stress and anxiety undermine, our well-being, and then maybe you can bring that into what your program integrated approach to mind-body fitness.
So that's a huge question, because I think everybody is under
I'm looking
stress.
for a huge answer.
Yeah. So stress is a constant in all of our lives. Now, some stress is good because it helps give us a keener perception of things. Like if we're giving a public talk and we feel a little anxiety or a little stressed about it, that kind of pumps up our adrenaline, and so we get a little more clarity. But what happens in the world that we live in today is there are so many stressors and so much impact on our minds and bodies that we're in this constant state of alert. And this is really a built-in biological mechanism that we all have to deal with danger and for our survival, so that, we can live to, run and act and be alive another day. So the bottom line is that when we're stressed, we have this hormonal release of adrenaline and all these hormones that really pump up our heart rate and our breathing and pumps all the energy into our extremities. So that's great for running away or fighting or freezing in place and, surviving. But the challenge that we have in the world we live in is we never get a chance to get out of that stress level. So we're remaining in that constant level of hormonal releases, which basically represses or suppresses our immune system. It tends to suppress our digestion because, again, all the energy is going to your extremities. So if you're just having your meal and you're being chased by a Bengal tiger, you don't want to be the Bengal tiger's next meal. So you really don't care about digesting yours at that point. So your digestion goes into, suppression. And, many people have symptoms of stress that should signal them they can't digest things. They're getting headaches. There are a lot of bodily symptoms that should be a red flag to say, wait a minute, maybe I need to slow down a little, or I need to stop and relax. But what happens is we stay in these heightened levels of activity, and stress was really meant for a short burst after which we're supposed to recover, and we're not recovering. So now we're suffering and we're getting sick more than we have ever seen before. And we're not treating the illnesses by getting to the source of what's causing them. We're just throwing pills at it, or, doing things that really aren't productive. And so it's really
Alcohol,
undermining
whatever.
our well-being. Yeah, the addictions, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. There's so many things you said, so many good golden nuggets there. So I'm gonna maybe just pick a couple to go on. So you mentioned digestion, and I think we all have learned now, or maybe not everyone, but certainly us in the space have learned, the gut is our second brain, or maybe it's even our first brain actually. So and then in time with that, I believe, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Peggy. That I think all symptoms of illness, whatever they are, and they manifest differently in different people, really are a root cause to some stressor, and people manifest the same stressors in different ways, and we all have our different stressors. Would you agree with that, or what's your take on that?
Oh, absolutely. If we do not get to the source of what's causing the challenge that we're facing, it's doomed to repeat itself. So people think they're sort of suppressing the symptom and it'll go away, the headache, but it's going to come out another way. So now you've managed the headaches maybe with, pills, and now, 2 years later, you have cancer. Well, you haven't gotten to the source of the imbalance. And dis-ease is that the whole body is really not energetically balanced and in harmony. So you're not in homeostasis. So when you're out of balance, the body's not going to work properly. And so for me, it's like so important for our clients who we work with to pay attention to the symptoms, because our bodies are talking to us. But what do? And this is what I used to do all the time. It was like, oh, it's just stress. I just powered through it. And we're not built for that. Our bodies are going to shut down in time if we don't give it some attention and give it really the support that we need. So that was really what led, with all my trainings, to my creation of the Mind Body Fitness for Life program, because it's really a comprehensive approach. We've got to integrate. We've got to have mind working with body. And what often happens with illnesses, again, are that we're just living in our minds, and our minds are controlling our reactions to life and our perceptions. And as a result, we're not seeing reality as it is. We're creating these illusions, and we're like pre-programmed for disaster. So many aspects of this really need to be unpacked. And I kind of don't know where to start because I know we're on a short
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. And yeah, but I'm going to go not a tangent, but I have to ask this question. So I'm a big believer that, and when I work with my clients about, there's educating them on the hidden sources of stress, things that people don't really think about. Of course, people can list a bunch. So what's your top one or two, sources of stress that you think that most people have, or that you see in your clients?
So really the biggest source, there's so many, it's hard to pick one or two, but
I know.
find so many of my clients lose sight of themselves and their own purpose. They're too busy living the lives that they're told they should be living, or that these messages that they've gotten from their past, and they don't realize that they're actually rooted living in their past. And all their reactions to the present are really reactions from this pre-programming that they've embraced for their lifetime. And it's not reality. And so we get upset about things, or upset about someone, or have difficulties in relationships because we're reacting from something that might have happened 10 years ago. That's not what's happening now. We're not in the present. And so we create our own suffering because we're really creating our own world through our perceptions, which oftentimes are off. They're not really what's in front of us. They're not seeing the reality as it is. So that's one of the biggest things. And the other is really when someone is living so much with those past thoughts, they lose their sense of purpose in the now, because again, they're still being influenced by these old messages that really don't function in the now. And so they're not finding their soul, their spirit, their calling. And so they're feeling lost. They're feeling a lack of connection, a lack of purpose. And that's really important for us as human beings to have, is to be able to, not just for our own well-being, but to me, it's really about, instead of waking up in the morning and saying, oh gosh, what can I get out of this day, is what can I give to this day? What can I bring to the world that will make us all better? And so I feel like we have to kind of change our thought process and be more collaborative, and be able to really work together, which is why I love talking to people like you, because that's what you're doing. You're doing the work and you're walking the walk, and that's what makes the difference.
I love that answer, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. And I think you're the first person who's mentioned that avenue or that response to kind of the number one stressor. So, and I think it's super important. I think I say it a little bit in a different way, but I think, purpose or why is like kind of the first thing I talk with clients. And, they have these longevity or anti-aging goals, but it's like really comes back to purpose. But I want to ask you this one question here. You kind of said, these stressors or past conditioning or whatever, and you threw out the term, like maybe from 10 years ago, and I know you just threw out a term, but I'd like to ask you, like, what do you think about like inherited stress and inherited, what's your thoughts on that? Well, I'll tell you my thoughts afterwards, but I want to hear you first.
Oh yeah, I'm interested to hear yours. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by inherited stress, because there's like a behavioral stress that we can adapt from our parents' behavior. And then
what I mean, I'll just clarify then, just maybe that helps you answer, Peggy, is if our, grandparents or even further back potentially, went through something, maybe they were, I'm just going to make up an example here, they went through the Holocaust, but maybe that was never really talked in the home with the parents and now to the grandkids, but there's still that sort of stress that's genetically passed along. That's kind of what I meant by my question.
Right. So there's a lot of different theories about that. I don't know what the real answer is, but I mean, my theory is that yes, absolutely, it does get passed through the genes, but part of that is behavioral conditioning along the way, because you're patterning the behaviors and you may not know why you're patterning them, and most children don't. And then you carry that through your lifetime, not questioning it. And I'll tell you a really silly story that I thought was very illustrative, how this particular woman kept making this roast, and she would cut off the ends of the roast every time she would make it. And so her daughter made it the same way. She'd cut off the ends. And finally, her daughter's daughter said, Mom, why do you cut off the ends of this roast? And she said, I don't know. My mother and my grandmother used to do that. And so they checked back. The grandmother's roasting pan was too short to fit the whole roast, so she cut off the ends. Well, why did we continue to carry that on? And that's a really silly example, but there's much more profound things that happen through that kind of conditioning and just behavioral patterning. So that's a big part. But I mean, I kind of go further, to be honest, because I do believe that, we are energy and we have past lives. And this energy that we are, our soul, our being, is carried through. And sometimes we can carry those past life experiences into this lifetime. And there are ways to address that as well. But that's just another component that kind of goes beyond our sort of typical dimension of coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So just to close the loop on that and my thoughts, I don't think we've done a really good job, or maybe we haven't even done the study in humans, but they certainly have in rodents and other animals, and have shown that. And just a personal example, our current dog, we fostered his father, who had a lot of trauma, or street dog, got rescued, a lot of trauma, and there's some things that are still, I think, passed down to our current dog. So I totally believe that. I mean, I don't think we've necessarily proven that in humans, but there's a lot of things. Humans aren't big rodents, but I think there's a lot of similarities. When we do testing, that we can make correlations, I think, to some degree.
Well, and just to add to that whole thought process, people who have had organ transplants, heart transplant, suddenly manifest a desire for certain foods that they never desired before, but the person they got the heart transplant from used to desire that food. So we do store signals in our physical bodies that I think can get transmitted through the organ transplants or other ways too. So
absolutely,
yeah, it's an interesting topic, but
for sure we could go another hour probably just on that and debating
absolutely.
That. One thing next question I want to ask you about is, and I think it's super important. I think if there's one single thing that anyone can start with to improve their overall health, is probably, addressing any deficiencies in sleep. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on sleep optimization, and, as far as rejuvenation and performance and such.
Totally a necessity. I mean, it's one of those biological functions that I feel many people deny because there's so many things they're trying to get done that, so I'll miss an hour or two of sleep. It doesn't matter. I'll power through that. And sleep is where we do restore, renew, revitalize. And I know so many people who are challenged with weight problems. Well, when you don't get adequate sleep, you actually crave carbohydrates to keep fueling your body because you haven't had enough sleep and enough rest, and you start gaining weight. And people will say, but I've cut down on my calories. I don't understand, but they don't realize that the whole metabolism changes because of that lack of sleep. So it's really important to get quality sleep and to set up a pre-sleep routine that really allows you to set up the proper environment and just the proper frame of mind to be able to get good sleep. And I think I shared with you, I'm trained by world-renowned yogi master Sri Amritji, Yogi Amritasai, in a sleep optimization, I'll call it, since you brought that word up, in Yoga Nidra, which is a yogic practice. And I've had a lot of doctors send me their patients, and their patients say, well, I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible. And I'll ask them, can you lie down on your back or sit in a chair? Because then you can do this yoga. And it's really a guided meditation that takes you into very deep levels of your consciousness, different states. And that's the place where you go to when you sleep at night, to restore and renew and really revitalize and reboot your body and your mind. So in just 20, 30 minutes, this yoga nidra practice has been shown to be equivalent to 3 to 4 hours of deep restorative sleep, like REM sleep. So it's really transformational. And to be honest, that was my very first training that opened the door for me to enter into the practice that I currently have, because that transformed my AAA personality so much that I thought other people need to know about this. And being a journalist, being a communicator, I thought, I'm starting here. And so then I added a lot of other skills and trainings to that. But that was really key and is really key to me, to everything. I still use it. And even though I recommend not using it in place of quality sleep. I will sometimes, if I haven't had a good night's sleep or I'm getting concerned about something that I need to perform the next day, I will take my 30 minutes and do a yoga nidra practice. And I'm amazed at how I feel like I've had a full night's sleep after that. So it's really a transformational practice that the ancient yogis knew that really helped restore our biology.
Amazing. And I'm going to have to make an admission here on my own show. Yoga Nidras probably was brought to my attention, I want to say 5 years ago, and I have resources, and I have to admit, I have not put into practice. And I think, Peggy, this conversation is going to be the one that pushes me over the edge to like actually try it. I've heard so many good things about it, but I've just never made the time or really committed to learning. And again, I'll just, again, full disclosure, for what what I do and how I help my clients optimize for healthy aging. And I walk my own talk as well. But if there's one area where I will let slip sometimes, usually for familial reasons or that community building type of thing, is probably cutting my own sleep a bit short. So maybe this might be my power nap, so to speak.
Well, it is. And actually, the way I started, the first year I started doing it, literally every morning before I got out of bed, I would just lie there and listen. So I just would get up a half hour earlier in terms of awaking, but I'd stay in bed for another half hour and really rejuvenate and allow myself to get that extra sleep. And I'm a competitive tennis player. And I will tell you that I did not even notice the changes that were happening in me because I was just doing it every day religiously. And people on the tennis court would come up to me and say, "Are you on drugs? You're so much calmer," because I have an intensity when I play competitively. And it's not that I've lost my intensity, but I've lost that kind of just over the top, approach to things. And I'm just calmer. And people now actually love to, when I play doubles, they love to partner with me because I'm such a calming influence. And you play better when you play from a place of calmness. And in fact, you perform in everything better. You become more creative. It's really the place of integration, mind and body.
Okay, now you sold me. I got to do it now. So I didn't know that you were a tennis player, so I have to ask this question, totally out of left field here. But have you tried pickleball?
That's funny you should ask. I have such an aversion to pickleball because of the sound of it, and it is the rage where I am. It is.
It's growing. I'm picking
but
it
I have
up
two
myself.
concerns. One is the sound. The other is people are getting more injured at pickleball than any other sport, and especially older people, because they think, oh, it's a smaller court, it's okay. But it's very tough movements on your body because they're very quick movements on hips, ankles, and a lot of people fall. I think chiropractors are really happy with pickleball.
Well, I think it just goes to general conditioning of people, right? You can't pick up any sport just right off the get-go, just because, it seems easy or whatever. I mean, even if you did swimming, non-bearing exercise, but you had poor joint mobility, you could injure yourself too, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that kind of came out of left field here.
True.
So
no, that's funny.
I want to make sure we get to two more really high-level topics here. So I'd love for you to tell me about your award-winning novel and what it's about and how that came about.
So that's actually a long story, which I'll make very short, but it really speaks to how adversity can actually lead to a breakthrough. So it was the middle of the pandemic, 2020, and I was working on a series to help clients and people even beyond my normal circle of influence. So I was creating meditative moments from the Paradise Coast, from these beautiful natural environments, because just looking at nature can calm your nervousness and your stress. So one of the outlets was, we have beautiful beaches on the Gulf of Mexico, and I climbed these boulders because there was this beautiful snowy white egret on the top of this boulder. So I'm videotaping the egret. I'm literally talking. I was bonding with him. I mean, we were one-on-one. And I turned to descend and I slipped, and I didn't want to break my camera, so I crushed my left arm. I mean, it was a comminuted fracture, had to have surgery. And in fact, I even had an evaluation from the medical director of the US Davis tennis team. And he said if I didn't have surgery, I'd never play tennis again. And I also play golf. So there I went for surgery, had never had surgery in my life. I was terrified. Created a audio meditation that's on YouTube about it to help prepare for surgery, and was in terrible pain. And so my life partner, Patrick, was working during that time. And I spent a lot of time by myself in pain, feeling isolated. It was the pandemic. And all of a sudden, this story just started downloading. And I would go to my computer when I finally could move my arm at all, and I'd start just writing what downloaded. And it was so exciting to me because I would wake up every morning and I couldn't wait to get to my computer to find out what happened next to my characters. And Patrick would come home from work at the end of, a couple of weeks, and he'd say, because I was doing this so intensely, and he'd say, I'm really getting worried about you. You're spending way too much time alone. And I said, are you kidding? I'm with these amazing people. We're traveling all over the world. I mean, I was with these characters. And it does take them all over the world. It's a story about a middle-aged woman who has actually a motorcycle accident. And when she comes out of the coma, she starts looking at her life. Has she lived it all wrong? What should she be doing? And so it becomes her journey of self-discovery and takes her to the south of France and to England and New York City. And so all of the places are actually real, but none of the characters are. And it was really exciting to do that. In fact, I'm starting to work on a second one now. We'll see
awesome.
how that emerges.
What's the book called?
Starting to download. The name of it is Awakening, a novel, and it's on Amazon and books. What is it? Barnes and Noble.
That sounds like an easy convert into like a movie.
It could be, because it has a lot of different destinations, so it would be fun to see that happen. But we'll see. I have won 3 National Book Awards on it, and it's my first work of fiction. And I had always wanted to do fiction, but sort of never had the time. And suddenly, with a broken arm and pandemic, no place to go, there I had the time, and it was really a thrilling place to be for anyone who's a writer out there. I mean, it really comes from a very deep place within. And when I read it, I mean, I can't even believe that I wrote it, because I can enjoy reading it as if it was written by someone else entirely, because you're in a different place when you write fiction, especially. And it just flows from the source. And it's really exciting to see it unfold. And in fact, I have a good friend who's writes a lot of best-selling fiction. And he said he was shocked that I wrote it in 10 weeks. He said, it takes me a year to write any of my novels. So,
well, I know what I'm getting my mother-in-law for Christmas now. So
fun.
I think she would love that for sure. So I know we're getting a little bit just long in the tooth here, but I do want to touch on this one topic. So, and then I have a couple wrap-up questions as well. But I'd really love to. I mentioned it kind of at the top in the bio, just sort of the future of wellness in relation to some breakthrough technologies in stem cells. I'm a big proponent of stem cells, exosomes, et cetera. I know that's going in a lot of different ways right now. So I'd love to hear your take on that and how you're involved with that.
So I found a new technology that I am just absolutely enamored with. And it uses the concept of stem cells, but it activates it using what's called photobiomodulation. And so it's not an injection. It doesn't cost $10,000 and maybe works or maybe doesn't. It literally just stimulates your body to create a certain copper peptide that activates your own stem cells. And of course, as we get to middle age and older, our stem cell activity declines, and that's what contributes to our aging. So here's a way to reverse aging and to do it affordably. And for anybody interested in a side business, there's also that potential, because it is through a network marketing company. And I've been in companies before because I've liked the products, but this one is completely different from anything I've ever experienced. everyone is so heart-centered and compassionate about supporting and helping others in finding what they need and what's going to work best for them. So it's really helping clients to achieve the outcomes they want. And in the process, the business is growing, and the inventor is extraordinary. He actually invented this under a contract with the US government for the Navy SEALs. And it was initially invented to produce more energy so that the Navy SEALs could basically stay awake many more hours without needing drugs or coffee. And so it was so effective that the inventor began developing other ways of using this photobiomodulation. And I'll be honest, my first experience with it was on the tennis courts for energy, because in the summertime, where I live in Southwest Florida, it is beastly hot. And I was about to give up tennis for the summer because I'd be so exhausted after playing that I'd be shot for the rest of the day, even with my yoga nidra. So I started using them, and I could not believe the difference. And more recently, the inventor came out with ones that activate these stem cells, and I'm awed by the difference it's made. I've been using it about 1.5 years now, and my life partner Patrick has had neuropathy in his feet for 25 years. And after 8 months of using this, he couldn't believe, because he's my biggest skeptic, he couldn't believe that he actually could feel his toes.
My wife is my biggest skeptic too. I think I know which company you're talking about. I've come across this before. So I'm gonna, and I have to admit, just for the listeners, I'm always about doing my due diligence before I kind of promote anything like that. But me and Peggy are going to talk offline about this, and I will circle back with that about this product for sure. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And yeah, and stem cells, injections or whatever, they are very expensive. So anything that can help us activate our own is definitely warranted for sure.
Well, what I'm really about is non-invasive. I believe the body can heal itself. I believe we have to give the body the right elements: enough sleep, the right exercise, healthy foods that are nutritious, that really, give the body the raw materials that we need to function properly. So I'm always about non-invasive. And that's what I don't like about the injections, because they're, invasive and expensive.
Good point. Yeah, very, very good point. So as we wrap up here, and I think I'm, we're very aligned in, what kind of our approach for sure. But I always like to wrap up with some, kind of health related questions, because I'm all about health. So what does, and you might have already mentioned this to a bit, but what does your morning routine, what does your morning health routine look like?
So, it varies, because a lot of times I play tennis first thing in the morning. So I'll get up, and I'm also trained by a world-renowned Qigong master. So I do this anti-aging Golden 8 Qigong series. So I'll usually start with that, and then I might run out the door and play tennis. Other mornings I'll get up and I'll meditate for 20 minutes. Sometimes it's 10 minutes. And then other times, it really depends on the day and what my schedule is. So I don't have a consistent morning routine, which one of my work in progresses is trying to develop that, because sometimes you have to get up earlier in order to really adhere to your morning routine. I do intermittent fasting, so I don't eat anything in the morning. I will have a cup of coffee, and I use a special coffee that has like turmeric and MCT in it, and all sorts of good additions. And I'm now trying actually a mushroom coffee as well. So I'm always experimenting with other approaches and other things, but I always try to evaluate what's going to power me the best through the day. So, always do some supplements that also will help me just really stay energized and clear thinking.
Peggy, do you like chocolate?
I love chocolate.
So there's I don't know if it's available where you live, but there is I'm sure it is, but there's it's escaped me at the moment, but you can look it up, a brand of, it's basically a mushroom chocolate powder that you can mix into, you can have it by itself, or you can mix into your coffee, and it makes your coffee taste like like a hot
Okay,
chocolate or something and then you
yeah.
get all the mushroom, you get the lion's mane and cordyceps and all that.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't typically drink it during like kind of when it's warmer, but when it gets to winter time, because then sometimes it's just it's not even I'll have it as like more of a tea and like in the afternoon, not with coffee in the morning per se. But yeah,
I want that.
look into that. So one last question here. So, and you kind of also alluded to this a bit at the beginning when you were talking, but if you could go back, and maybe it's your advice to your younger self, or maybe to, maybe someone who's, 20, 30, 40, whatever it doesn't mean, like who hasn't yet started on their health journey, like so however you want to answer it, but, what advice would you give to yourself back then, or what advice would you give to someone who's, maybe in that age range now to like jumpstart their health journey?
I think one of the most important things is really taking time out. So the biggest thing I would recommend is set yourself on a schedule, like every couple of hours, take a break from whatever you're doing, 5 minutes, do some deep breathing. If you can get yourself into a meditative routine, that would be even better, because that will help jumpstart every aspect of your life, mentally, physically, and you'll choose healthier things because you'll be more mind-body aligned. So I think that would really be, I wish I had known that way back when, just to be able to manage the stresses better and be able to be more consistent in my approach to how I want to show up every day. So I think that would really be a huge advantage for anybody to really cultivate, especially at young ages. I teach 5-year-olds how to do meditation.
Love that. I think that should be taught in schools, but well, there's a lot of things I think schools should do differently. But that's a conversation for another time.
We have a lot of conversations.
Yeah, we have a lot of side conversations for sure. So Peggy actually has 2 gifts for our listeners. So one is a free recording to help reduce stress and anxiety, and it can be found at 3 minutes minutes spelled out 3 minutes destress.com. Do I have that right? 3 minutes.
3 minutes to destress.com.
3 minutes to destress.com.
Literally only 3 minutes. And I highly recommend people download it, have it on their phone, and every few hours, just do it. 3 minutes is nothing. And what I found is by doing that, it gives you more time because you have more clarity, you have more energy. It's amazing what that can do in just 3 minutes.
Absolutely. I can second that for sure. And then the other gift is a customized audio recording of yoga nidra, to help improve your sleep, reduce stress, boost your immunity, all the stuff we talked about earlier. And the $50 savings on that, and we'll have the link. That's a bit of a longer link, so I won't say now, but we'll have it in the description in the show notes for that. So yeah, thank you for those gifts to the listeners. Peggy, as we wrap up here, any last words of wisdom or golden nuggets that you'd like to share with the audience?
So the biggest thing I see in my clients, which kind of take them off course, is that they keep feeling that the solution to whatever they're facing, that's a challenge, comes from outside. And really the solution comes from inside. So happiness is an inside job. So I think it's really important, again, the meditations and just taking time for yourself, slowing down, trying to simplify, even though you may be building up a new career or a new relationship, it's still important to really focus on taking time for you. And that time can be 10-minute chunks, here or there, but just to make sure that you do that.
That might be the title of this show. Happiness is an inside job. I love that. That's a soundbite for sure. So appreciate that. So we're going to have a link to all in the show notes, in the description, all of Peggy's links and all that. But where's the best place people could connect with you if they want to work with you or learn more about you, etc.?
The easiest place is probably mindbodyfitnessforlife.com.
Awesome.
So that'll take them right to the basics, and they can go from there.
All right. Well, Peggy, I really appreciate you being on the Deepak Saini show. It was a fantastic conversation. We might have to do round 2, or at least have a private conversation, because there's so many side conversations.
Yeah, I don't want to leave.
Yeah, we can have for sure. So I'm just going to throw it back to J23, who's going to guide us out with some music. Thanks for listening to the Deepak Saini show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company,